Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Today, our guest is Kyle Smith, clarity consultant and developer of a practice called NLSE, Neurolinguistic Somatic Experience. Before this, he's run his nutrition and fitness coaching practice for 13 years. Today, we will discuss his career change journey, how language shapes our reality, and how to eliminate the victim mentality. Hi, Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with your career and your background, first of all, as we do with all of our guests. So, what was your dream job when you were a
I
child?
wanted to be a comic book artist where it has superheroes. When I was a
Ah,
kid, like as early as 5, 6, 7, I was putting comic books together and I was doing my own illustration stuff.
how did you start your professional life, going from your dream in your childhood? What was your first job?
It was in the restaurant industry. I started working when I was 15, and as I was going to high school, it also had a apprenticeship program. So while I was working in high school, I was putting my hours together for post-secondary for the culinary arts program. And so that I just stuck with until my early 20s. That was my first job. That was one, and I still love cooking. If I do, I'm totally open to doing a gig. If a buddy of mine's like, hey man, can you help me out with this cooking thing? I'm like, yeah, because that's fun. So that was the when I really started working. And before that, actually, my first job or my first entrepreneurial endeavor, I was 11, 10, 11, 12. And in the subdivision I lived in, I would go and clean driveways because we're in Canada, so there's a lot of snow. And so I would do that and I would say it's 20 bucks per driveway. And I'd say
Oh,
it's 30 bucks and I'll do the sidewalk too. And the sidewalks are legal, like the people are in the subdivisions are legally bound to. They're supposed to prevent safety issues. And so I knew they were going to say yes. So I would just get 30 bucks a pop for about an hour to 90 minutes of work. And then I just moved to the next house.
no, I think that
So,
was great at that
yeah,
age. So, how did you progress then from being a chef to becoming a nutrition coach?
for sure. A problem that I had near the later end of my culinary career was the culinary environment, the restaurant environment was playing a toll on my overall well-being. And so I had no problems with going to the gym. However, I never had a trainer at that time. And a friend of my mom's boyfriend at the time was a personal trainer. He was the first one I met in person. And that was around the time when the behind the scenes footage of personal trainers for movies like 300 and superhero movies, when the training aspect got in, then I really got interested in it. So he offered me a couple sessions. So went and then doing a workout and it was awesome. And then I asked him how he became a trainer and why he became a trainer. And he wanted to help people. And he told me how he went about it and told me how to do it if I wanted to do it. And I just went into that. And so, what inspired me to make the pivot ultimately was I got to the point where I was working with people for free. I would do workouts with people so I could get paid for it. So I knew that there was a need and a use for what I was doing. And I also wanted to go into an industry where I can help people. So that was the biggest one, going from feeding people to helping people from in a physical sense.
Hmm. And how did you live this transition? Did you have any difficult times when you were going through this period where you wanted to change and you were feeling unhappy in your previous job or career, or was it easy for you?
It was easy for me. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was really smooth. The part where there was resistance was that I put so much time there because I was there for 5 years. And outside of that, I also felt ready to move on. And I knew that I would resent myself if I stayed where I was in that particular time. And so I had to fight that resistance to stay the same in order to be able to make the decision to go into that next industry. Because I believe that if we figured out what we want to do, and then it's just simply making the decision to do, then we can figure out how to make that transition smooth.
Hmm. At what stage in your life and career did you suddenly discover the NLSE or Neurolinguistic Somatic Experience that we will explain also what it is later?
With the practice, so it's made up of two parts where there's story work and breath work. The breath work I was doing for 9 years prior to integrating it with the story work. And the story work I learned about from a fellow that I had on my own podcast as a guest, and then he connected with some people and got me into it. And that's when I was really working with communication and developing my thinking and creating frames and being able to organize my thoughts. And so I didn't think of putting them together until I experienced a session where it had the breath work and it had the story work combined. And I thought to myself, damn, this could really solve a lot of people's issues, a lot of people's resistance, a lot of people's stories that hurt, haunt, or taunt or
Mm,
annoy. And so then I put it together because it's a combination of your working with the body while also working with the mind. And the mind goes into the nervous system. So we're getting everything working together while in a set and setting where an individual feels comfortable.
mm. And so, if we can explain to our listener what actually is neurolinguistic somatic experience.
Neurolinguistic somatic experience is a practice that I developed, and I say practice specifically because there is a participation to it. People are doing the things in order to get things done and get what they want as a side effect. So I wanted something that was practical, tangible, and repeatable. The subjective individual, the person may change. However, the tools can stay the same because as long as we're breathing and as long as there's words between our ears, we can use this practice to pivot where we want to go. Yeah. And so it's a way for folks to get unstuck, celebrate their wins and progress, and be able to set goals that they achieve in less time. That's what NLSE is, a practice to get things done.
Mm,
And then breaking down the words, there's neuro, meaning of the mind, and specifically mindset. And we understand that developing mindset is important. However, we don't have a practical definition oftentimes. It's ambiguous, it's unclear. And so folks will say, I'm working on my mindset, I'm developing my mindset, I'm looking for my mindset, and they're projecting what it is rather than switching up where I define mindset as the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves or our opinion of ourselves. We can have a higher opinion of ourselves and a lesser opinion of ourselves. We can adjust accordingly. And with the neuro aspect, like I mentioned earlier, there's the brain and then there's the nerves that go through our body that send signals to stimulate these parts of our body to be able to move our fingers and be able to do his thing. And so we dive into the mind and we dive into uncluttering the mind in order to throw the party. So that's
mm,
where folks get unstuck. We get to take out the stories that are making progress difficult. They're working as anchors and remove them and build up from a stronger foundation rather than just stacking more shit on top of the shit. I hope you don't mind me saying shit.
that's okay.
And then there's linguistics, and that's the language. That's what we say, think, write, and how we breathe.
Yeah,
And
and I
so
would like to ask you about that exactly. You emphasize the power of language in shaping our reality. So, how do words and stories impact our experiences and behaviors?
totally, and that perfect timing for that question. With our words, they can create stories, obviously, and those stories will influence our behavior. The stories are the things that we see the world through. And if we're not mindful of our stories, if we're not thinking about our thinking, then we're going to either consciously or unconsciously adopt stories from other people rather than create our own. And that's a dangerous place to be because then we're just living as a duplicate of other people's stories rather than creating our own stories. And so this ties into language, and it's the word abracadabra. When I say abracadabra, what do you think of?
Magic?
Totally. Abracadabra is an old language, it's Aramaic. And abracadabra translated to English is with my words I create, with my words I influence.
Oh, nice. I like it.
Going from the fitness part, where in fitness, the building blocks of our body are the macronutrients, our carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. These are going to be what influences how our body looks and feels. The quality of those sources is also going to impact how we feel and how our body looks. Words, I view as the ethereal macronutrients of the mind. If we feed our mind quality words, we're going to have quality thoughts. If we feed our mind shit words, we're going to have shit.
Mm. Yeah,
Language
definitely.
plays a very big role in really organizing how we perceive and see everything around us and how we perceive and see ourselves. And so, how the breath ties into that is the breath being the language of the body. Breathing high and tight, good to fight. Breathing low and slow, good to flow. And so, when we're able to regulate, we can understand, oh, why is my breathing up in the chest when I'm actually in a very comfortable place? Down regulate. Breathe into the belly, relax the state of being, chillax, just be. And then you have a conversation between the body and your brain. Oh, okay, no, we're actually good. Then you're neutral.
Mm.
And then for the somatic aspect, that is of the body, and that puts together both the physical body, where it has an intelligence, where if we give ourselves a paper cut, our finger is going to heal it. It's going to do it passively. There's a passive healing process. Our physical body is time bound. And then there's the other part where we have our energetic body or emotional body, emotion, energy in motion. And this is not time bound, this is timeless. And that's why we can experience traumas or even happy memories from the past in the present. We do the same thing when we're pursuing something and we're anxious about it. We're anticipating a future that doesn't even exist in the moment. And we're allowing ourselves to feel anxious about nothing that's in our perceivables, like what we can see in this moment. So we could work ourselves up and we can work ourselves down.
Mm.
And so with the energetic body, we go into it to actively participate in the processing of these unmetabolized emotions, stories that hurt, haunt, taunt, annoy, dreams, resistance, and it could be generational as well. It's not just one with the individual. We start with the individual and then we can make our way back and make our way forward.
Mhm.
And then with the experience aspect and with the somatic, that's where the breath work comes in as well. So if you look at how NLSE is from top to bottom, it goes from the brain and works its way down into the body. And then the E is experience. We experience it real time in this moment. So I've seen people have a whole identity shift in a session and they think to themselves, you just changed my life. And that's quoting. That's not me just coming up with that. It's been an amazing practice and it's been very fulfilling. Basically, every chapter of my work or careers has been very fulfilling to get to this point, without a
Mm.
doubt.
So, going back to language specifically, is there a way to stay focused on what matters us the most? And can we use our language to influence in a positive way our lives?
I I do think that there is a way that we can make sure that our words are working for us rather than against us. So we turn our curse words into cure words. So one thing that I think is the easiest thing to go with, and it's just to think about our thinking and to think how we communicate and how we text, for example, or send messages, emails. And that's to remove soft talk and speak with more solid talk. So soft talk is ambiguous, unclear language that everybody has heard at some point in their life if they have not said it themselves. An example would be, I might be able to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm probably going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I might be able to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm thinking about making it to the party for 5 p.m. I want to make it to the party for 5 p.m. These are all soft, ambiguous. Are they going to make it? Are they not? Are they actually committed to going? Are they staying home and they're just waiting to tell us later because they don't want to hurt our feelings?
Mm.
So when we remove the probablys, maybes, could, should, would, those, and we speak with solid, I am going to make it to the party for 5 p.m. I'm going to be at the party for 5 p.m. There's a different feeling that we get inside of us.
It's
And
true,
when
it's
we,
true. Just now you
right?
said that, I felt different.
Totally. And
Yeah.
so I think of this as I think of this as microdosing decision making. So we're able to make the small decisions and trust ourselves to make small decisions. And as we build competence in our decision making, I believe more of our authenticity comes out because we're making decisions in alignment with where we want to go and we're being true to ourselves. So I believe that the inner work happens along the way, it just flows. And when we have that solid talk and we're making decisions, we develop competence in our decision making, which puts us into a place of confidence. And then if we're able to make small decisions and be decisive, then the big decisions are going to be a real easy. Where am I putting ambiguity? Where am I putting it unclear? Do I even think I'm going to make it? If there's a question after the statement, there's a good chance that's not solid enough.
It was very powerful. So let's talk about the victim mentality. That is something central to your mission. How do you define the victim mentality and why is it important to overcome it?
The victim mentality is an acquired personality trait in which a person tends to regard himself or herself as the victim of other people's actions, even in the absence of clear evidence. The victim mentality depends on a habitual thought process and attributions. So, a victim mentality has a set of characteristics that people can adopt in order to maintain where they are, or if they're a little bit more malicious, get what they want out of people. They're the victim mentality in opposition to the victor mentality, where you're victorious. You are the person that is in the headspace where you are being the hero of your own story, your own personal lore. The
Hmm.
victim mentality is the blanket that we put on ourselves that's granting us permission to prevent progress. So as long as so if we have a victim mentality and there's no reason outside of us that there is an actual conflict and we're just creating it in our mind and only experiencing it within us, then we are just simply holding on to that story that could have a theme. So a story that has themes, let's say, for example, this is a great example. I think that most people have had a friend or have been the friend that have dated 10 different people. However, they were the same person. So when we have something that we experience early on in our life, let's say it's rejection, then we go through our life and we can see that the times that we stopped ourselves from progressing were the times where we thought we were going to be rejected the most, as an example. And so that same theme goes throughout our life because it's still in our energetic body. And when it's in our energetic body, it's going to keep us where we are. And when we alleviate ourselves of the stories and of the identity of the woe's me, it's everything else's fault rather than my own fault, and turn on and put on the victim mentality or victor mentality, then we're able to become the hero rather than the villain. We turn a contaminated story into a redemption story.
Hmm. And can you share some strategies or methods that can help us to break free from the victim mentality?
Totally. I'll actually go with the step process that I work with people on because it would be the easiest to go with.
Mhm.
And if folks do it, then let me know about it because sometimes the pen can weigh 500 pounds. Some of these stories can be heavy. And I find that the people that get the most out of this practice have a strong desire to change. They have an openness to explore and a curiosity. And they also have a willingness to test their pain threshold
Mm.
and challenge it because it hurts to do the inner work. And that's why people are okay with not doing it. So the more we can test that threshold, we can test our resilience. And I define resilience as a purpose, suffering with purpose or
Mm.
challenge with purpose. Because resilience, similar to courage, is just simply someone who's fearful being brave. And going into the actual part now, there's a four-step process for this. And I highly recommend putting the gorilla on the table. Go with the heaviest story that you can think of that is going to challenge you the most. If not, then pick a different story. It's totally okay. There is a reason why I say put the gorilla on the story or on the table because the rest of the stories downstream become a lot easier to handle. So the first step which is already a huge step. So even if you only do step one, you're crushing it because most people don't do this. Step one is to title that memory out and write it down, pen to paper or on a desktop. You want to write it out conversationally, so you're as if you're talking to another person, or as if you're watching it on a screen. And you're going to write it on the side, err on the side of more detail than less, with proper grammar and punctuation. And just by finishing that, and you just write until you're content, you'll know when there's enough of the story shared. You'll feel less pressure already. And so what happens is we're taking the story out of our head and putting it somewhere else. We're outsourcing our storage because stories or our brain, similar to a computer, if we have a whole bunch of desktops open, then our computer is going to move, or a whole bunch of, not desktops, a whole bunch of the tabs open, then our computer, our desktop is going to move slower. So the more we can take stuff off of our desktop and put it someplace else, the more space we have to actually think. And we're introducing a different perception because while it's in our brain, we're going to we're going to think of the story as if we're still there experiencing it, rather than creating space from the story through this taking it out and putting it somewhere else. So then that's step one. Step two, read it out loud. And you can read it by yourself or you can read it with a person. I will definitely say that it's much more potent and stronger when you're reading it to a person. It's just simply more effective, to be honest. Solo is still good too. I do solos as well. And by being able to read it, then we're just going through and seeing how the story bring what feelings the story brings up. So then we go into step three. Step three is to read it 30% slower, 70% your normal rate of speech. So you're reading it really quickly. Probably you could be reading it fairly quickly on the first read, and that's because people don't want to feel it. So they'll keep the breath high and tight in the chest so that they don't have to bring it down slow and feel the emotions that the story's bringing it up. When we slow it down, it forces the breath in. So we can speak 30% slower as we're reading. Then we have a breath in and out because we're not able to hold that much tension and that much air for that long when we're reading. So the difference between the two. It just forces the breath. It's a physiological sigh. And so then after that one, we go into step four. And step four is when we integrate breathing into the reading. So at the period, the occasional comma, and sometimes and, insert a breath into it. So you're reading the story still slow, big breath in, and I'm able to see the difference and feel the difference between how these words influence me.
Mm.
And so in psychology, I read that it takes about 3 points of exposure for exposure therapy for the experience to really settle in, for the emotion to be processed through. And so with this particular step, we have 4 steps of exposure where the person feels it as if it's happening sometimes, but they create distance very quickly. So they no longer feel as though they're in the story, they feel out of the story and they see things they never saw before out of the story.
Mm.
So that's the practice.
Well, it's incredible. And yes, if anyone want to try that, and then let us know how it goes as well.
Yeah.
So we're reaching the end of this episode, but we have a few more questions. So first of all, for our listeners considering a significant career change, what advice would you give them based on your own experiences?
Mm. The advice that I would go with is turn your problems into passions. And in saying this, because with doing what I'm doing now, I solved a problem that I used to have, and I see with the data that it has somewhere to go, and I'm going along with it. And so when a, a definition for intelligence and a sign of an intelligent individual or someone who has intelligence is their ability to solve problems. And I overall believe that when we can turn our problems into profits and passions, Then we have a sweet spot where we are able to help folks that resonate deeper with where we were compared to where we are now and providing the opportunity, and then being able to make it something that is lucrative and enjoyable, where you can create the life you want within your fitness, your finances, your fellowship, and your fulfillment. And then when another one I would say is that when you make the decision, keep the decision and really push through. And that every challenge that is on the way is there to help you grow so that you can become more intelligent by solving better problems. And I think that people get paid in direct correlation to the degree of the problem that they solve.
What advice would you give instead to someone looking to live a more fulfilling life?
Ooh, that one is a good one. Someone looking to live a more fulfilling life. Figure out which stories are yours and which stories are others. Because we have been taught that if we go to school for a certain period of time, we go to post-secondary, end up in a relationship, we end up married, we end up with kids, then we end up close to retirement, folks can still find themselves unfulfilled even though they checked all the boxes. And so I believe that fulfillment is the persistent pursuit of self-betterment and being a positive contribution to the human race. And
Mm.
that begins by the development of oneself. And I think that true fulfillment is when we know that we have our own back, when we no longer experience loneliness rather than it's a preferred solitude. It's when we become our own guide as well as best friend. And then I believe that it's not what we achieve outside of ourselves that leads to fulfillment, it's what we can achieve within ourselves. And then what we experience outside of that is just bonus.
Mm. And now, really, the last question. If you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
I had an interesting thought because I think of time travel often. And so there's one part. So one thing, if I could time travel back to when I really wanted to make change and adjust, I'd be able to, I am fully confident in my competence that I would be able to go back in time to my younger self in 2016 and just say, hey, dude, I can actually help you get to where you want to go. So that would be one part. Then if it was, then if we're thinking butterfly effect time travel, I don't know if I'd want to say anything different to my younger self because everything right now is freaking awesome. And so I would be like, I would try to play it off as if I was a stranger and I just talked to him. However, I would be resistant to fiddling with the time.
Yes, because probably your journey has been your journey and it led you to where you are now. So
Totally,
sometimes we can look back and say, okay, I could have done something different, but also the results of our life is the story that we lived before.
totally. I would say you're on the right track. That's what I would say to my younger self. If it was just a sentence, I'd say you're on the right track.
Thank you, Kyle, so much for joining us today and sharing your inspirational story and wisdom with our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And the last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and tune in next week for a new episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.